What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Zamboni. I'm a musician at Astrology, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. As always, thank you so very much for being here. Thank you for rocking with me another week. Thank you for going to zambonifunk.com, where you can find music, you can find astrology readings, you can find a podcast. There's a new episode of the podcast probably going to come out today. Hopefully I can hit this election on time. You can get electional reports where you can get timing advice about when to launch your own podcast or your product or whatever it is. You can find all of that at zambonifunk.com. In the store section, you can find merch. You can get a 10-minute reading, a video reading like this. That's in the store section. It's not on the book part of the section. There's a whole bunch of stuff there at zambonifunk.com. Thank you so much for checking all of that out. I am very proud. Let's talk about the astrology of the week ahead. So this week is another banger. We've got a lot of stuff happening. This is the busiest time of the year. We have 1,000,001 things that seem to want to be happening all at the one time, and none of it looks particularly comprehensible right now. It's very opaque. Everything is very unclear. So here's what I'm talking about. So we are in the middle of eclipses, right? So last week we had the full moon lunar eclipse. We are moving toward next week. We're going to have a new moon solar eclipse in Aries. That one's the big one. It's got the spot in Texas where we're going to see the crossing of the lines of the paths of totality and all this, looking like a major geopolitical drama wants to get started up and all that sort of thing. I talked a bunch about that on the Plant Cunning podcast. So if you want to hear me talking at length about eclipses and what I think, making some wild predictions about what kinds of things might be going on as far as leadership is concerned and all of this sort of stuff, you can find that. It's on YouTube. It's on wherever podcasts are available. Plant Cunning is the name of that podcast. I've been very fortunate to be on that podcast a few times. So if you want to go there and listen to me talking about eclipses, then there's a whole bunch to be had there. So right now we are in between eclipses. So we had the last one and they're about 2 weeks apart, right? The way that a full moon and a new moon are. And so we're in this in-between point here where there's all of this weird eclipse stuff going on, right? Everything is then when we're thinking about eclipses, we're thinking about darkness where there should be light, right? The moon, when the moon is full, it shines a bright silver light. It's light enough that you can see in the nighttime. When the sun is up, then it's daytime and you can see stuff, right? Eclipses are moments when there are shadows instead of that bright light. So that's a moment where we're going to see some weird limbic kind of changes. Limbic might not be the right word. Liminal is, I think, the word that I'm looking for here. It's weird. It's the in-between space. The freaks come out at night, but then the freaks can come out in the middle of the day when the eclipses happen. This kind of thing, right? It's weird. So there's that sort of situation going on here. We're also going to see how things get, because we've got Mercury going retrograde at the same time as this, right? So Mercury is going to station retrograde in the next couple of days, and is going to. So we're going to have a stationary Mercury. Mercury is the planet of communications and making things intelligible. The Mercury is a very thinky kind of planet. Wants to think through how the stuff works, and in Aries maybe wants to make something actionable or find information and make it useful in some kind of way. Especially if we can get something started and get something moving, get it happening. Mercury retrograde is actually very bad for getting things happening. It's very good for redoing stuff that you thought you were finished with, and that I think is likely to be a pretty big deal here throughout this time, because we're looking at the uncertainty of shadows in eclipses. We're also looking at a fair bit of uncertainty when it comes to Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde, the way that works is we're going to go forward for a little while, and then go backward across the same territory, and then go forward again across the same territory a third time. So there's 3 passes on the same thing. A lot of times this will look like doing a thing, realizing that you fucked up, or that there's some kind of situation going on where you have to do it again. You come back, take another look at it, revamp your approach, and then go forward. You have to try to do the original thing next time. So we're looking at this kind of narrative arc with the moment that we've got here, and all of this is going on in Aries. So Mercury is retrograde in Aries. The eclipse that we're about to have here is also in Aries. Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars is hanging out with Saturn in Pisces, looking hella uncomfortable, looking like it's a pretty difficult, gear grindy, very frustrating, very annoyed. The other thing that we can see going on here is that, so they're in Pisces. Venus had been in Pisces for a little while. We've had Venus in Pisces for some weeks. This has been, I typically like Venus in Pisces. I think that it's pretty delicious and things can be pretty fun and lavish and exciting and all of this sort of stuff. And I have experienced a fair bit of delicious things. We just played a show last night, for example, and Venus in Pisces is very good for music and this kind of thing, very good for artwork and all of the most beautiful things, cooperation and harmony and all of that sort of stuff, teamwork. Venus in Pisces is really good for that. Even with Saturn there, I'm not mad. I think that Venus and Saturn can do great things together. You know, it's worth remembering that Venus rules Libra and Saturn is exalted in Libra. Like Venus and Saturn have a kind of tense relationship, but they know how to work together, right? So Venus has been moving through Pisces. And so there has been a certain amount of like ability to get to the Venus things because Venus is exalted in Pisces. Venus is super comfortable in that space. So even with malefics there, Mars moved in there. Again, Venus is not really sweating that, especially because Venus is separating at this point. But later, so this week we're going to see Venus conjunct Neptune, very dreamy and imaginative, very good for like thinking through how things could possibly be and maybe fantasizing about it in some kind of way that might be inspiring, that might push you toward trying to actually get the thing into reality in some kind of way. Then a bit later, Venus is going to move into Aries, and Venus is moving pretty quick at this point. So it's not going to take very long for Venus to get into Aries. Now, once we've got Venus in Aries, then that is right there with the sun, with the eclipse that's going to happen, with the North Node, of course, with Mercury retrograde as well. So this looks extremely confusing, pretty uncomfortable. Things are a little weird and unsure and difficult to understand. The thing about Venus being present here at the same time is it looks like it could be fun. Like there's an opportunity to have fun or find some joy in, like whenever I think about Venus and Aries, just like kind of by itself, with it, not thinking about all of the other things here, but like thinking about Venus and Aries or Venus in a Mars sign, then a lot of times Venus is going to be pleasurable, right? Like thinking about the pleasure principle, things that feel good. And then Aries is like kind of a war-making sign, right? We can think about Aries as being like the spark, the thing that like gets you fired up and gets you excited or something like this. Swinging an axe or this kind of thing, like starting a fight. That's how Venus likes to do it, right? And so Venus, or that's how Aries likes to do it. So Venus there in Aries looks like finding pleasure in conflict or in starting the fight. Like there's a certain kind of like, you know, like I'm thinking about like popping a pimple or something like that. Like, you know that it's not good for you, but you can't resist it. And there's a certain kind of joy to it as well, right? Like a certain kind, and like the pain of it can be kind of fun. So Venus actually gives us a little opportunity here to get into the confusion of all of it and feel how that feels. And maybe there's a certain kind of surrender or release that's possible here that could be helpful or fun or delicious in some kind of way that might even be a little bit counterintuitive. Venus is not super at home there in Aries, but this is in fact opposite to Libra and therefore as far away from home as possible for Venus. And so Venus is not like super easily doing the Venus things in this position. And so we might see something that is a little bit counterintuitive in the way that we can find pleasure. And I think that this has a lot of potential for us, especially in a moment where none of the information makes sense and there is so much yelling going on. And it's not that the people who are yelling are wrong, it's just that there's so much yelling that it sort of like if you just raise the volume level and everything raises the volume, then it kind of equals out and it just becomes a cacophony and none of it makes any sense anymore, right? And so there might be a way here for us to get into this and find some opportunities even to love each other. Could we do that? I think it might be possible. Thank you so much for being here. Go check out zambonifunk.com for all the rest of the stuff. Peace and blessings.